Peace and blessings, family. Once again, let me give all praise to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and welcome to another episode of Bible Answers. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the tradition of Afghan girls who live as boys may be threatened. Now, once you think you have seen it all, you see something else and realize you have not seen it all. This is a tradition of Afghan girls who live as boys. Now, what happened was after, I guess, Afghanistan got from under a Russian occupation, I think this was back in the 80s, one of the traditions that reemerged, and I think that this had always happened. It's pretty old, but I think it reemerged after the Russian occupation of Afghanistan, was this tradition of Afghan Afghanistanian girls being dressed up as boys. The whole idea, the premise of this is that the girls would be able to live a more free life, and families who did not have boys would be able to dress their girls up as boys and have them work jobs as men. It's also kind of seen as sort of like a shameful thing for a family not to have a boy in the family, so they would try to do this as hopefully a blessing would come. The next child would be a boy, so they would dress the girl up as a boy, allow her to go to school, allow her to work, allow her to do all the things a boy could do that a girl can't do, and that was because of certain freedoms that Afghan girls were not allowed to have in Afghanistan under the Taliban Muslim rule. Now, if you were to tell me this was something that was happening years ago, uh, when the Taliban did run Afghanistan, I could look past it. But what this is another um, example of the United States putting its customs and values upon a different people. We see it here. The LGBT community has pushed a lot of its ways onto the American public, and you can see they've done it also with Afghanistan. You got to remember, the United States military has been in Afghanistan for 20 years, since 2001. So they have had 20 years to push this. Now, let's look at this article and get a little bit of the backstory on this. So the CNN report says the last time the Taliban ruled Afghanistan after Soviet-Afghan war of the 1980s, life for women and girls was ghastly. As a report from Congressional Research Service put it, Taliban prohibited women from working, attending school after age 8, and appearing in public without a male blood relative without wearing a burqa. Women accused of breaking these or other restrictions suffered severe corporal or capital punishment, often publicly. Afghanistan routinely edges towards top list of worst places in the world for women and girls, but some things have improved after the United States invaded in 2001. Okay, so that's the key right there. After 2001, and you can. I'm gonna put this in the description box so you can read the article itself. But here's some other things that they were talking about, and let's see what we got. CNN, how had things changed in 20 years that Americans were in Afghanistan? Nordberg, the person who was responsible for this article, there has been a new, mostly urban generation in big city centers like Kabul, a whole generation who went to school and university. They had big plans for themselves, both men and women. They have smartphones. They know what's going on in the rest of the world. These are the ones who, in the fantasy of a new functioning democracy of Afghanistan, were going to take over the state and push the country forward. Americans were trying to cultivate Americans were trying to cultivate the most ambitious, the most talented, the most spirited people to run their own country, which is sort of like a colonist fantasy. Okay, so how have things changed in 20 years? So, one of the things that's happening is that they're worried that the Taliban, now that they've taken over, are threatening this tradition of Pacha Bosh, dressing your boys up or your girls up as boys. Now, my question is, if things have changed in the last 20 years, why would girls still have to dress as boys? So what that tells me is that this has nothing to do with the old tradition. This has to do with another LGBT agenda. And as you can see, Nordberg says right here in the article, when asked, Americans are trying to cultivate. Well, we know what happens when the United States tries to cultivate something, and this is just another uh, LGBT push. This has nothing to do with the old tradition, because for the last 20 years you've had Americans there to make sure these type of things didn't happen. So women were more free. You had women who were in politics. You had women who went to school, to universities. So this has nothing to do with what they thought the Taliban was going to do. This had more to do with the American cultivation, and we know what that is. What does the Lord have to say about this? Let's go to Deuteronomy 22 and 5. The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God. Why is that? When you wear these things, when you put those things on, you're taking on the spirit. So when a girl puts on a man's clothing, she's taking on that masculine spirit, that masculine energy. And that is not what a woman should have. A woman is supposed to have feminine energy. A man is supposed to have masculine energy. So what would have ended up happening there, where you were going to allow the girls to dress up like boys, and eventually you're going to have the boys dressing up like girls, and you're going to have total confusion. And so now the fear is that the Taliban is going to come back, and some of these girls are probably going to end up being put to death. So, I mean, this is another example of Babylon getting its grubby little hands on another person's culture and trying to make it their own, which is wickedness. The women should be dressed up as women. There's no problem with those women being covered up. It cuts down on a lot of the lusts, a lot of things that we face here in the United States, where women wear whatever they want, scantily clad clothing, and a lot of the women here are treated like objects, or treated like sexual objects because of this. So um, this is just, like I said, another example of Babylon the Great, or Mystery Babylon, um, putting his hands on something and making it bad. And now you've put these girls who've only known this for the last 20 years in danger, because they have this American mindset, and they're not in America. This is not the United States. These type of things are not going to be tolerated. So this is just another example of what we have here, and you're trying to push it there. Now here, as bad as it is, it's still more tolerated here. That type of behavior is not going to be tolerated, and so you're going to probably end up seeing in the future, you're going to see some news articles where they're going to talk about some of these women who refuse to go back to the old way being put to death for this. So that's all I have for you on this one. Peace and blessings, family. Shalom.